Welcome back to the Draft Dynasty Podcast. My name is Jeremy Betz. I'm joined by my good buddy Andrew Wilbar. We're here to break down all things NFL draft. Whether it's fantasy or for real, we've got you covered here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Not a lot of fantasy going on right now, Andrew. We'll have to talk about after the draft, maybe some dynasty rookies to get behind as kind of maybe our jump back into the fantasy realm. But for now, we're going to keep deep diving this draft class until we get to draft day, on which our final show will run. It'll be our final mock drafts. We'll kind of duel those as the final show before the draft hits. And I think we're going to be having plenty of shows and plenty of content coming, obviously from fansfirstsports.com and steelcurtainnetwork.com. There's a bunch of different websites that I'm sure you can get your team's draft news and notes from through FFSN. We'll be happy to share all that with you and be a part of the draft process this year. Andrew, we've got a fun show today. Day 2 prospects is what we're going to dive into. How you feeling?
I'm excited. I love day 2 of the draft. And honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest, even though all the anticipation is built around round one, that's really hard to say.
Round one.
I do think that day 2 and day 3, I enjoy more than day 1. With the guys that come off the board, I know that once you get onto day 3, middle of day 3, it gets a little laborsome at times. It's like, oh, another guy off the board that I couldn't care less about. And then you always have your guys you're waiting to see come off the board. And you wait for those guys to come off. And then day 2, I think, is great. I mean, we do a lot of fantasy football. Day 2 is where the fantasy gold comes from, whether it be a receiver, running back, each and every year. That's where the gold comes from. You may get 1 or 2 great prospects, but the vast majority, unless you have the first or second pick in a dynasty rookie draft, the guys that you're going to benefit the most from are going to be those day 2 prospects, guys that can be plug and play starters, start immediately, give you immediate production based on the situation that they go to. And this year, I'm telling you what, there is going to be a lot of running backs. We talked about Bucky Irving this past year. I did not like Bucky Irving in the draft last year, but he went into a spot that had a specific role for him that fit him. It was a great scheme fit. And sure enough, he was one of the best running backs last season out of that draft.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of the day 2 guys are like schematic fits for your roster. And on day 1, first round of the draft, you're taking the best players, the guys who are a lot of times, especially at the top of the draft, they're scheme independent, right? You can just plug and play a lot of these guys into whatever system you've got because they are just that talented. But on day 2, you start to see a little more nuance with how teams are approaching their positions and the players that they're bringing in. And it starts to fitting these schemes and play styles and personalities of rosters. There's a lot more that starts to go into it. So it does make it a lot more interesting. And I think the place we have to start, Andrew, is at quarterback, because we know that there's probably 2 or 3 quarterbacks going in the first round. If I were picking and choosing, I'd say 2 quarterbacks going round 1, and then the rest start to trickle off starting on day 2. Is that kind of how you see it as well? Who's the first quarterback on your radar for day 2 that you're like, this is a day 2 lock and is maybe the jewel of the draft class on day 2?
Well, my personal jewel is Jalen Milroe, but I think the guy that will most likely come off the board first on day 2 would be Tyler Shuck. I believe that there are enough teams out there right now that feel confident in this guy's ability. Maybe he may never be great. I know that the age is a concern for some, but when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, quarterbacks are playing again into their 40s right now. So if Tyler Shuck is good, okay, wow, we can't have him for 21 years on our roster. We can only have him for 14 or 15. Like it's still like you're still getting good value overall out of it. It's not like he's just going to be a one contract type player. I believe if you feel like Tyler Shuck is a guy who can be a franchise quarterback, you take him. So I think that he's going to be an early pick on day 2. Some think he could sneak into late round 1. I don't see that happening. I don't think there's enough desperate quarterback teams. I think the teams that do need quarterback, like the Steelers, like the New York Giants, I think the Giants are one of those teams that are a little bit more desperate than others. But even the Cleveland Browns, I think Kevin Stefanski knows that he has some leeway. If they have another bad season, they're okay with it, and they're not going to fire Kevin Stefanski because he has proven that he is a very good head coach. So I think if you look at just the grand scheme of everything, I'm not sure that there's enough teams to fit him in the first round. But if you're one of those teams, I'm not saying the Steelers would necessarily take a Shuck, but I think the Rams could be in play, a team that could trade up if they're sold on him. I think he'd be a great fit in Sean McVay's system. You think of, I don't know that the Browns would be the greatest fit for him personally, but if you're looking in New Orleans, if they forget someone, Tyler Shuck could be an option for them too, if they aren't sold on Spencer Rattler, which I think from the sounds of it, they're doing a really good job lying to us if they are not really on Spencer Rattler right now. So it could just be a bunch of smoke, but I think that Tyler Shuck will be the first guy off the board. He's got the best arm of the guys on day 2. I guess Jalen Milrow is the exception. But when you combine the accuracy with the arm, the guy who's most ready with a solid arm, with the traits, with the tools, I think Tyler Shuck is that guy who could potentially achieve greatness in the NFL. There's still some rough kinks. He's never been my favorite guy, but I do love his drive. I love his attitude, how he approaches the game. And I have developed a lot more respect for him this year, how he's battled through injuries and continues to fight back. You can see that tenacity and that character and his willingness to be do whatever it takes to be good.
Some pundits label him as the most NFL-ready quarterback in the class outside of Cam Ward. And I can see the argument there. I do agree with you that there are some issues in his game that may prevent him in the long run from becoming a 10-year starter in the NFL. But I think at worst, right, you would consider him as kind of like a stud backup quarterback for the duration of his career. And if you see that there's upside beyond that, then he's worth the trigger pull early on day 2. The guy for me that I'm going to be watching as we come to the back end of round 1 is Jackson Dart. Is somebody going to trade into the first round for him? Because if not, then I'm guessing he's coming off the board with one of those first 2 or 3 picks at the start of the second round. If Cleveland drafts Abdul Carter at 2, and Jackson Dart is still there and they weren't able to move up into the first round for him or didn't want to or something like that, and he's sitting there at 33, I would not be surprised if he's the pick right away for them. That makes sense for Stefanski and company. I'm really intrigued to see if some of these guys that we think are like borderline day 2 prospects, like a Will Howard, right, or a Kyle McCord, do those guys sneak into day 2, or do we see kind of the devaluation, quote unquote, of the position group because it's not a great class this year, much like we did in 2022, where you had one guy go in the first round, the next guy to go was in the 3rd round, and after that, it was the 5th round before we saw another quarterback go. Is that kind of how things go this time, or is this group a little bit better than that? That would be my question.
I think the depth this year is better than what I gave it credit for at the quarterback position specifically. I think there's a lot of guys who, most of which will not pan out. Just if you look at history, they're not going to. But I think you do see a name or two from this list of guys, and you could really go 10, 11 deep of guys that could get drafted this year. I think you could see a dozen quarterbacks get taken in this draft, but 1 or 2 may slip to undrafted free agency. But even once you get to day 3, you can talk about guys like Dylan Gabriel. You may have one of the fallback options if a McCord falls to day 3 or a Will Howard falls to day 3. There's going to be some guys that are still there. But I think if you're looking at day 2 specifically, yeah, I think Jackson Dart goes round 1. I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't, but absolutely, if he is still there on day 2, he will go off, I would say, in the first 5 picks. Teams have had a whole day to figure out, reset their boards, and be like, okay, our jobs could be on the line if we don't have a good season. We need to get another option in the door. Even if we weren't sold enough on him to take him in round 1, we got to at least swing for the fences here because that may, he may be the one to save our jobs if we hit.
2 questions for you before we move on from the quarterbacks. How many guys, or which guys would you say are day 2 locks?
Shuck, Milrow, and the last one, I don't know that Kyle McCord is a lock to go there. I don't think Quinn Ewers is a lock to go there, but I believe there are teams that will fall in love with him enough to take him that high. It's just a matter of what team is it, and will one of those teams be a team that's already taken a quarterback because they fell in love with somebody else as well. So I'm going to say right now, I'm going to say Jalen Milrow and Tyler Shuck are definite locks.
Okay.
I think Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, and Kyle McCord could but I don't think any of them are locks.
Okay. So by the end of day 2, we're seeing at least 5 quarterbacks off the board between Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, and Jalen Milroe. And maybe you get a Quinn Ewers or a Will Howard or a Kyle McCord in that group as well.
Yes.
I agree with you there. Second question. NFL news from Thursday. Not Jalen Milroe. Joe Milton traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 5th round pick. Dallas also gets a 7th rounder with the player here. If you were a quarterback needy team, but you were going to wait till day 2, day 3 to be picking a quarterback in this draft, would you have sent that 4th or 5th round pick that it ended up being a 5th round pick to the Patriots for Milton, or would you ride with one of these guys?
If you were taking him and you already have a starter in place, I think you would take the cheaper option and go with Milton. He's proven more than any of these other guys. I mean, the quarterback position is still the hardest to evaluate. You never know exactly what you're getting. The league still does not truly know how to evaluate quarterbacks. If they did, then we wouldn't be having this huge discussion about the quarterbacks every year. There's still guys that bust out every year, and it's like, well, how did they miss? Well, it's because even the NFL doesn't know exactly what they're getting with these quarterbacks. So I think that if you are a team out there, Milton's at least proven enough upside. I think you ride with that. If you're a team that's looking at, like, if, for instance, they gave a 5th round pick and they get a 7th round pick back, you're talking about guys that are there in the 4th round this year. Okay, but Quinn Ewers, maybe you get lucky with Will Howard if he's still there. Or if you're looking for a more athletic guy, you can go with the other guy from Houston, Donovan Smith or whatever. Go for an athletic type dude. I'm taking Joe Milton over any of those.
Yeah, I agree. I would have, if I had the opportunity to spend the same pick on Will Howard or Joe Milton, I'm taking Joe Milton. And I'm probably doing that for anybody but maybe Shuck and the guys ahead of him. So
McCord would be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, McCord would be kind of the cutoff point for that. I have Howard above McCord, so we differ there in our rankings. But the point being, like, the upside for Joe Milton to me exceeds the upside for what we've seen or what we're hoping to get from some of these guys even on day 2 of this draft. So we'll see how it plays out. Dallas may have secured themselves a steal, and we'll see how the Dak Prescott situation goes. There's some wacky rumors going on there. I think he's still their quarterback this year, but another move like this makes things a little bit more interesting up in Dallas. Before we go to break, Andrew, let's get to the other position group here that I think we're going to see a lot of players go on day 2. That's the running back position. Who starts the day 2 run at running back, and when does that start? How do you see that going at maybe the deepest position in the draft?
I think Travion Henderson will be the guy that gets it going on day 2. I think you're going to see a team take a premium pick with him, with his explosiveness, with his potential. I think that he goes there. I think you see 2 running backs go round 1. I think Amari and Hampton will be off the board. So you're looking at Travion Henderson kicking it off. Beyond that, I think it's open. You could go so many different ways here. And every year we see running backs go in a totally different order because everyone it's so schematically based. What are you looking for? What do you want? What's their nick that you don't have in your room currently that you want to add to? Are you going to switch from a RB1 to a committee, or are you looking for an RB1 guy who can take a lot of I think you're going to see a lot of committee type guys in this draft. You don't have a bunch of bell cows in this draft, but I think you're going to have a lot of guys who it's going to be frustrating for fantasy football because, like, okay, which guys are going to pan out, which guys are not, because they're going to get so few touches. They're not guaranteed a lot of touches anyways. But I think Dylan Sampson is a guy. Ran a 4.42 at his pro day. Measured a little bit smaller than I thought. 5'8", 5'9", 199. So he's right under that 200 mark. But a guy super explosive. He's got a great second gear in the open field. Teams are going to fall in love with that speed. I think we both talked about DJ Giddens, Quinshon Judkins, your guy Caleb Johnson, LaQuint Allen. We forget about LaQuint Allen, how balanced of a running back he is. He is going to be a very nice role running back in the NFL. And then I wouldn't rule out Cam Scadaboo either. I mean, maybe he falls to day 3 because he's not the fastest back. But when you watch him on tape, I'll take the power that guy runs with and the heart that guy's got with 4.57 speed, which is apparently what he ran at his pro day. I'll take that with what he can do and the explosiveness he has over a lot of these other running backs that run low 4.5, maybe even high 4.4, but don't have the combination of vision, power, and drive that a guy like Scadaboo has.
I like it. And when I talk about the running back class, I think this is where you specifically start to see schematic preference trump out with running
Yeah.
backs. So, offensive coordinators, they're going to want certain guys to operate within their offense. As Steelers fans, we can look and say, what does Arthur Smith like? He likes the wide zone. He likes guys with vision, cutback lanes, one cut type runners. He likes that type of setup with his running game. So who are the guys that fit that? And there's several of those, right? Like you mentioned, my guy Caleb Johnson. I think he's maybe the best in the class at that specific role. But you've got guys like I'm looking at a guy like Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech. Where does he go in this draft? The explosiveness is off the charts. I mean, he's right behind Ashton Genty for yards after contact, and he's not a big guy either. 5'9", 210. He's got good size, but he's a thick, compact, low built guy, right? And he's going to have, I think, a lot of suitors on day 2 of the draft. I think you throw him into that conversation. One guy I've been reading up on a little bit, RJ Harvey out of UCF.
Yes.
Not the most explosive player from a speed perspective, but this guy has jukes for days. He's quick. He's got a lot of good vision that you see on his tape, where it looks like he's going to a hole, to a gap, and then something is happening behind that. He reads the linebackers well. He reads his blocks well, and he can sneak through in other areas. He is, in a lot of ways, that Bucky Irving type in this draft that makes a lot of sense. So he could sneak into that conversation as well. And then one guy I wanted to get your thoughts on is Kyle Monange from Rutgers. How do you feel about him? He's one of the more polarizing running backs in this draft because I just don't get a good feel in league circles, like and what you follow on X and all the different scouts out there. Like, where does this guy land in the whole situation?
I think he's going to probably fall on day 3. I've heard some people saying he goes day 2. The speed is a question mark with him. I'm still not sure exactly I don't even know if he ran it as pro day, what he ran. I'd have to look that up. I'm actually checking that right now. I don't see a 40 time posted. He ran 4.4 in the shuttle, but he measured at 5'8", 209. He's not the biggest back. But if you look at his combination of production and his explosiveness in the open field, he's very hard to bring down one-on-one. Once he gets going, he's got solid lateral quickness. I like the way that he approaches the game. He's got an element of toughness to him, which I always like. That long speed is going to be a question mark with him. Can he burst off those big 30, 40, 50-yard runs in the NFL and really take some of these to the house? He's not the greatest in pass protection either, and I think that hurts his value as a third down back. And I think that's honestly what pushes him to day 3. He needs to take a big step of improvement in the pass protection department. But overall, again, another guy with significant upside who fought through playing, on just a mediocre team. But man, he was out there every week grinding, and we saw his production. He was efficient. I think there's a lot of things to like about Kamanange.
Good stuff. How many running backs do you think go on day 2? I'm just looking at the list here, and I see Henderson, Johnson, Judkins, Giddens, Scadaboo, Tutin, Martinez. I think Damian Martinez goes in the 3rd round probably in this draft.
Good.
Ollie Gordon, I don't know about Ollie Gordon. He seems to be falling a little bit, but Dylan Sampson's there. RJ Harvey could be there. Probably 6 or 7 guys on day 2, right?
I would think so. If I had to set the over-under, I would probably set it at 7.5, maybe 8. I think that you mentioned RJ Harvey already. I think we talked about Dylan Sampson and Giddens and Judkins and Henderson, all those guys. I think those guys are locks. And then you've got a couple others. Every year there's 1 or 2 running backs that we don't expect to be available on day 3, and they still are. So I think it's bound to happen, especially in a draft like this, maybe more than normal. But I think that you're looking at probably a good 7 to 8 running backs that could easily go on day 3, and you still have a plethora of good options on day 2, and then a plethora of good options on day 3.
Yep. We didn't talk about Jaden Blue or Taj Brooks, but those guys could sneak into day 2 as well.
Yeah, I think they'll be day 3, but again, it's all schematically based. They have the talent in a weaker year of the running back class. I don't think you make the argument that they could easily make it into round, maybe even round 2. So definitely, there's always that chance they could still go.
Good stuff. Let's go ahead and take our break. When we come back, we'll dive into more of these position groups. I know we spent a lot of time on quarterback and running back, but those are 2 high-profile positions for day 2 of the draft. We'll get to the rest here in the second half of the show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Draft Dynasty Podcast, the second half of the show. We're talking day 2 prospects here. We've already talked about some quarterbacks and running backs, but Adrian, I kind of want to open the floor to you now for the rest of the offensive side of the ball. Who stands out to you as guys that you're looking at on day 2? Maybe a position group that you want to address with the remaining offensive players, but let's talk through some of these guys.
Well, there's definitely guys I want to go to the offense, but for the sake of variety, there's a couple guys I want to mention on the defensive side of the ball real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the defensive linemen and edge rushers, but I think there is a good group of that second tier defenders on the defensive side of the ball in day 2. I think a couple of these linebackers that I was sleeping on. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma ran way better than I thought he was going to. Runs a really solid 4.5 time. I think that he's a guy again be taken on day 2. Solid tackler despite his size. He diagnoses the run very well. Carson Schweissinger, you can say the same thing about him. I think Barrett Carter is a very underrated guy. He's a really good athlete. He moves well from sideline to sideline, a little stiff in his hips, but that can improve. He's a good tackler against the run. I mean, he was a tackle machine for Clemson this past year. Maybe not an elite blitzer, but I think a guy who can develop a little bit more in that area. But a guy, when you talk about having the awareness, the instincts, and the athleticism, he checks all of those boxes. I really like Barrett Carter as a sleeper on day 2 this year to be a really solid, high-profile linebacker in the NFL. And then Demetrius Knight, we mentioned him on the Steelers Fix this past week as a potential fit for a team like the Steelers. I think this guy's leadership and just his outspokenness, I think, is a guy, it's going to get him taken on day 2 as well. So there's a solid group of off-ball linebackers in that picks, probably between 45 and 70. I think you'll see a good 3 to 4 in that range go off the board. They'll be solid impact players for years to come. And then once you get to day 3, you're probably getting a pretty big drop-off.
Yeah, I agree. I like Chris Paul Jr. in that list as well, kind of in that range, back into of day 2. He's more of a coverage type linebacker, but he's got a lot of speed and quickness and sideline to sideline ability. And Barrett Carter out of Clemson. Clemson's been putting out some linebackers in recent years, guys who have some upside. I know Jeremiah Trotter didn't go as early last year as we thought, but him and then who was it that the Ravens took the year before that too?
Trenton Simpson.
Yeah, Trenton Simpson in the 3rd round. So kind of a linebacker factory there in Clemson. These are some good players, some good role-playing linebackers there. Defensive tackle is a fun group because outside of the first 3 or 4 guys here, Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, those guys that there's maybe a couple more that could sneak into round 1. I think of Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State, who's got some round 1 buzz potentially, but he feels like a day 2 guy to me. He kind of starts the day 2 group in my opinion. What does that defensive tackle group look like for you?
Yeah, I think Tyleik Williams is the guy that's going to be up there toward the top of day 2. I don't think that he goes quite as high as I've seen a few mocks where he goes in round 1. I think you see Darius Alexander go off the board very quickly on day 2 as well. Your guy, Alfred Collins, if you're looking for that bigger guy, that bigger body type, I think he's probably a later second round pick. But I'd be pretty surprised if he's – go ahead.
I was just going to say, would does that body type tend to tumble a little bit as well because of like you see them only as early down usage type guys. They're not going to give you a lot rushing the passer. He could be a guy I think could fall into round 3 because of, you have guys like Darius Alexander, like Shamar Turner and Joshua Farmer that have a little bit more pass rush upside and 3 down upside. Collins is more of a role player type as a true nose tackle. So I see those types of guys falling sometimes.
Right. Yeah, lack of versatility is going to hurt him. I think the same for Deion Walker. I think Deion Walker, there's a good chance he falls to day 3 just because we've seen him produce as a sack guy, but I don't know that we see that same thing happen in the NFL because he was able to get away with a lot of nuances in his game that were not cleaned up ever, and he got away with them in college. He's not going to in the NFL. A couple other names that I would mention. I think Omar Norman Lott could still go on day 3. A lot of people really like his tape. I'm not his biggest fan, but I do think he's a name to keep an eye on. Ty Robinson from Nebraska had a fantastic combine outside the fact he was a little tight in some of the drills, but overall a guy who's got great athleticism. He produced for Nebraska. I think he's a second, maybe early third round pick, but I think he probably goes in day 2 as well. But I'm telling you this, Jeremy, do not rule out the idea of Walter Nolan still being available to kick off day 2.
Sure.
If for some reason he is still there, I'm not saying he should, but I think there is a scenario in which Walter Nolan, because of the depth of the class, the defensive line, falls to day 2, and you get some of these quarterbacks pushed up. Jackson Dart goes late round 1. Maybe you have an extra receiver go in late round 1. I think you could see him push down the board a little bit to where he could be the guy to kick off day 2.
Yeah, that makes sense too. When you see a deep position group like this, and other position groups, we can talk about wide receiver here in a minute. It's not as deep, right? So you want some of those guys a little bit earlier, maybe. Your Emeka Egbukas and Luther Burdens and guys like that. They're going to probably get pushed up 5-10 spots in the draft because of the lack of overall depth behind them compared to a group like defensive tackle or running back where you see a little bit more of the depth. The edge rusher group's really good too. There's going to be a lot of those guys go on day 2. Who stands out to you as kind of the first name in that group?
Okay. I did have a couple other names I want to mention real quick, if that's okay. Back on the defense line, a couple guys. I did want to mention Jared Ivey as a guy who could potentially sneak into late day 2 from Ole Miss. Didn't test as well as people thought, but he's got a lot of athletic upside. And we talk about Shamar Stewart, but Shamar Turner from Texas A&M has a lot of people talking about him as a mid-round pick. I think he could go be that third-round type guy, 6'4", about 300 pounds, really solid body. And then one other name I'll mention, TJ Sanders from South Carolina. That was the other name I would mention. These are all guys that could be in that third-round mix, could be late day 2, early day 3, but scheme-specific could be guys. Sure. Sorry to disrupt there, but I did want to mention those guys real quick before we move on.
No, absolutely. And one guy I'll just throw out there too, since we went back to it, Jamari Caldwell, great tape at Oregon, not a great tester. So he was kind of a day 2 guy for me just on the tape, but I just don't know if he's going to go there now. We'll see. Somebody might throw out the workout stuff, the combine stuff, the pro day stuff, and just say, we like this guy's tape. Let's go ahead and add him to our room. He's an intriguing guy to watch in that defensive tackle group as well. All right, let's move on to the edge rushers then. You got anybody that stands out to you to start off day 2?
Starting off day 2 is a little bit more difficult with this one because of the depth, you could have a guy that drops. I think the most obvious name to throw out there would be Nick Scorton. I think he's a guy that goes up there pretty early. And Donovan Ezraku. Depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for more of the run-stopping guy, you're probably going to go with a Scorton. If you're going to go for a guy that's going to be more of a situational pass rusher, I think Ezraku is one of the best pure pass rushers in this draft with his bend, with his athleticism. There's a lot to like, but he is very specific. You can't play him as a guy playing in a 3-point stance. He's going to have to be that stand-up linebacker, edge defender in a 3-4 system. I think Femi Oladejo is a guy that could go in the top 50 picks as well from UCLA. He's a guy with a lot of physical gifts. Plays a little bit high when in terms of setting the edge against the run. He can get a little bit pushed off the ball at times, but he's got the power inside his core. He holds up well. It's just he's got to keep those pads down, stay disciplined. But Femi Oladejo, he was a solid tester. Landon Jackson's been on fire ever since the Senior Bowl. He had a couple rough times of practice. I'm like, I really did not care for this guy during the season. Then during the Senior Bowl game, has like 2 strip sacks, and then it has a really solid combine overall. Tests well. I think that Landon Jackson is a guy that he lost some weight. I think he's committed to playing more of that edge type role in the NFL. He's got that longer body type. Teams are going to fall in love with that. And then your 2 Ohio State guys to close it out. I think JT Tuimoloau. I don't think there's any way Tuimoloau gets out of round 2. I think he is a second-round pick. Correct. I mean, I may have to make changes in my mock draft, so I guess I can't say for sure. I don't want people coming back, a month into our shows. Oh, and Wilbar's mock draft 5.0. He said that he had Tuimoloau going in round 2, and sure enough, he has him in round 3. I think he goes round 2 most likely, though. And then I wouldn't rule out Jack Sawyer. I think that he's probably off the board at some point on day 3 as well.
Yeah, Sawyer was ranked really high by Daniel Jeremiah in his top 50s for a while. He just fell out of the top 50 in 3.0 for Jeremiah. But outside of him, I haven't seen him ranked as highly by some other guys. I think the lack of like high-end athleticism kind of hurts his stock, but you can't deny the motor and the college production, especially this last year. He was very impactful, and I think as a 3-down type edge rusher, he's got upside. He's not just going to be a rotational pass rusher. He can stop the run. He can come in off the edge. He's got versatility for schematics as well, though I think he's probably best standing up, right off the edge, 3-4 type guy. Yeah. So he's interesting for sure. Could James Pierce Jr. fall to day 2 because of the off-field concerns?
I think he could. Would not shock me. I was a bigger fan of his tape than a lot of people were. I didn't feel that it was bad because when you talk about just consistency of getting to the backfield, his pass rush win rate was still up high. It was just he didn't have the sack numbers that we were all hoping for. So I'm still a big believer in James Pierce Jr. I think he reminds me a lot of a smaller version of Montez Sweat. When you're talking about in terms of from a speed factor off the edge, different type of player, not quite as big as Sweat. But if you're talking about from an athleticism standpoint, I think there's a lot of similarities between James Pierce Jr. and Montez Sweat. I see a lot of it when you watch him on tape. But from another perspective, I will mention 2 other guys to keep an eye on. Probably falls to day 3. This one would be, but Kyle Kennard. I wouldn't be shocked to end up having a day 2 grade on him. I really would not have a problem with the team taking him on day 2 because his tape is so good. He still needs to get a little stronger against the run, but man, this guy is a really good pass rusher off the edge. He's got a great feel for getting after the quarterback. And one name that the league is actually higher than I am on it, ironically, is Michigan's Josiah Stewart. I've seen some second-round love for him. I think he goes probably in the 3rd round, but a guy who, despite not having the best prototype for size at about 6'1.5", 250, he finds a way to get into the backfield. He's good using his hands. He's got some surprising power there. And he had a solid season for Michigan. He was Michigan's most consistent pass rusher from the edge this year. And I think he benefited some from the interior of the defensive line, but the game, go back and watch this tape against USC. He was absolutely wonderful. So definitely a lot of good tape that was put out there by Josiah Stewart this year. I think that he goes on day 2 as well.
While we're down in the trenches, let's flip to the other side of the ball and talk some offensive line, because I think the offensive line is one of the most intriguing position groups in the draft, because I just have no idea who's going where outside of the top 2 or 3 guys. I mean, even a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr., where does he go in this draft? A guy that we were thinking is a top 10 pick for a long time going into last year. And then, I mean, there's been no hype around him at all, no buzz around him at all throughout the draft process here. How about some of those guys that we think could go back into the 1st round or early the next day? Tackles, offensive guards, who's getting pushed up a little bit. How do you see that playing out for day 2?
I wish I knew. I don't even think the best fortune teller in the world could tell you right now because there's
I
so many
agree.
guys jumbled here. I mean, would anyone be shocked if Kelvin Banks fell to day 2?
No.
Like, I think that's a legit possibility. The only guys I think are safe going round 1 are Armand Membu, Will Campbell, and Tyler Booker. I'm confident in saying that I think those 3 guys will go in round 1 based upon what I'm hearing. Beyond that, it's anyone's guess. I think that a guy like Ariante Ursary could sneak in round 1. Josh Simmons still could, but I think if you're talking about interior linemen that could kick off day 2, whoever does not go first between Gray Zabel and Donovan Jackson, I'd bet that one of them go in round 1, but whichever one doesn't, I think that they're probably the guy to kick off the day 2 run. I think it will be a run on offensive linemen here. My guy, Jonas Savaiinaea, who I absolutely love, I think that he's going to be a great guard in the NFL, great right guard. But plug him in I probably in the top 45 picks. I think he's off the board definitely in the first half of round 2. Marcus Bowe from Purdue is a guy who is rising on boards. I think he moves inside the guard at the NFL level, but probably a second-round pick. Another guy I really like, and nobody is talking about, one of the youngest prospects in this class, Cameron Williams from Texas. I know the Steelers don't need a right tackle, but man, if they did, I would be totally on board with taking a guy like Cameron Williams. Big, 6'5", 330. He's got a lot of power. Absolutely love his game.
I look at the 2 Georgia guards, Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild, as potential day 2 guys here. Yeah. They both play with a nasty streak and have good size. I agree with you that it's probably those 3 guys that are safe at the top that you mentioned. I think Gray Zabel is the one who sneaks into the first round. I thought his Senior Bowl was outstanding, and then his testing has been outstanding as well. So I think he pushes up into there. But the tackles, like Kelvin Banks Jr., you mentioned him. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes round 2. Josh Simmons with the injury history could go round 2. You like guys like Connerly Jr. and Marcus Membo, but I don't know. Those guys are day 2 picks. But I think that you're right. Outside of the running back position, the group that to me goes on the biggest run is the offensive line. And it's going to just be tackles and guards and all these guys mix and match throughout day 2. We're just going to see these names start flying off the board, along with maybe some edge rushers and defensive tackles.
I agree. A couple other names I'll mention before we leave. I think Jared Wilson's a safe day 2 pick after the way he tested the combine. I don't think there's any way he leaves day 2, still waiting for a team. I wouldn't rule out Jonah Monheim from USC as well. He could be a guy in there. A lot of interior linemen, a lot of these guys that are playing tackle right now, probably going to slide inside and be really good guards in the NFL. Some of them can't. One guy that I do not like at all at tackle, I could tolerate at guard, would be Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. His tape, I do not like it at all at tackle, but I do think if he moves inside the guard, that eliminates some concerns in terms of arm length, his stiffness, and his stance, allowing speed rushers to get underneath him. I think that is eliminated or at least minimized if you move him inside the guard. Still not a guy that I'm wanting my Steelers to draft or anything like that, but I think if you draft him, you're drafting him as a guard, not a tackle, even though that's where he played in college. Could play with late day 2. I think he's a day 3 pick. I have a day 3 grade on him. But a guy that a lot of people in league circles seem to be pretty high on. He could be another name to watch. But yeah, you're talking about, a dozen guys that could potentially go between Ursary, Simmons, Williams, Connerly. Those guys are sure to go in round 2, be off the board by round 2, I would think. Marcus Bowe could be in there. And then you talk about Savaiinaea, Zabel, Jackson. Emory Jones could even make it in there. So I think you're talking about at least a good solid 9 to 10 guys at minimum that go day 2, offensive linemen, guys, most of which will be plug-and-play starters.
My sleeper is Charles Grant out of William & Mary. I think he's a guy who could sneak into the back of the 3rd round.
Talented.
But yeah, very talented, good size. I think he's got like 35-inch arms. He's a long guy. So teams will play to that. Okay, let's down offense. Let's go to the pass catchers, and we can talk about wide receivers and tight ends in the group here. But day 1 at pass catcher feels like the 2 tight ends, Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, and then 3 or 4 wide receivers. But outside of that, I think you're going to see some of these guys start to go day 2 as well. And again, it's going to be skill sets. What do you need to plug into your specific offense? Who leads off this discussion for you for the pass catchers?
Man, if we're just throwing in all the pass catchers in general, one name that I think could be one of the first off the board, if not the first. Let's say at receiver, if Burden, Golden, McMillan, and Buka are all off the board, I wouldn't shock me if the first guy off the board on day 2 would be Elijah Arroyo from Miami.
Sure.
I wouldn't rule that out. Him and Mason Taylor, I think, go in the second round. I think they're both worthy of going second round. Arroyo is very much like a David Njoku type. Mason Taylor is a guy who you almost see a little bit of a TJ Hawkinson type player in his game. I think he's capable of blocking. I think he needs to grow a little bit more than that. I think Hawkinson was a lot more polished as a blocker at this point. But Mason Taylor's got that potential to be that inline guy. Man, I tell you what, there's a lot of I really like Mason Taylor. He's actually my third rated tight end in this draft. But if you're talking to wide receiver, I think that Savion Williams is a guy nobody's really talking about as a round 1 pick. I think he could play with round 1. I'm not quite as high on him. I don't think he's a complete receiver in general. But when you're talking about that 6'3", 220-pound body type, I've heard people compare him to, a Sammy Watkins. I've heard people compare him to a Cordell Patterson type player with the different roles that he can play in his versatility. So I think Savion Williams is a guy that, based on his versatility and the world in which we live with the Deebo Samuels of the world and that type of player, he could be a guy that really goes a lot earlier than people expect, and maybe where my grade would indicate on him. He's not even in my top 10 receivers right now. But I know that you like both the Iowa State receivers. They're going to go pretty early. My guy, Jack Besh. Can't rule out Jack Besh as a day 2 pick. I really think this guy's going to be a solid receiver.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Trey Harris, he could sneak into the back of the first round, but I think he's a solid day 2 guy. Yep. Didn't test off the charts, but didn't need to. He's just a big body receiver. He's kind of a bruiser out there. He's fun to watch. My guy, Jalen Royals, had a really good offseason. He's bumped himself up into day 2 consideration, I believe. Kyle Williams has been gaining a lot of traction in recent weeks out of Washington State for his route running ability, sure hands, and decent size. I mean, he's not huge. He's I think 5'11", 190, something like that. So he's got kind of that undersized underdog type mentality, but he reminds me of Deontay Johnson the way he runs routes, just sticks a foot in the ground and can get the other way. So he's had some hype. I don't know if it's quite enough to get into day 2, but I don't know. He's trending up. A guy like Isaiah Bond, who I would have said was a lock for day 2, is trending down. I don't know if he goes in round 2 now. But then the other guy I would look at, Tez Johnson. Where does this guy go? One of the smallest players in the draft. He's got kind of a weird mix of super fast on tape, didn't test as fast. What does that look like at the NFL level? How would you even use a guy of his size? But he could be a kind of an intriguing chess piece that somebody would make a swing on at the end of day 2.
Yeah, I like that name. Here's another name for you, Ty Felton from Maryland.
Yep.
With that 4.37 40. If you're looking for a burner, that type of receiver, Ty Felton is a guy who he had solid production in college. You watch the tape, he's very nuanced in his ability to catch the ball at any level of the field. He's good after the catch. I love your guy with Trey Harris. I love Trey Harris's tape. Not the fastest guy, but man, I tell you what, this guy catches the ball in traffic. He's tough. He separates late. Another name, everyone's talking about Matthew Golden. Isaiah Bond is still a really good receiver. I think people forget about that. Even though he didn't run as fast as what we all thought, he's a safe guy. I think he goes in round 2. And then Ilika Yamanor, I think from Stanford, with his size, he's going to intrigue teams. So there's a lot of unknowns with this guy, right? I mean, Jalen Royals is another guy. He's going to go day 2. Can't forget about him. He'll be probably late round 2, early round 3. Yep. But all of these guys, it's either a lack of production or a lack of consistent production that is keeping these guys from going up higher. That's why I think you could see Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel going higher than expected, because they had the production and they matched it with solid testing numbers. Ayamanor, I don't believe it was his fault that his production was kind of up and down. He had some huge games and then some, not so great games. But I think that was more because of, unsteady quarterback play, and just Stanford has not been what we've expected from them recently.
Right.
Savion Williams, you could say the same thing as well. Isaiah Bond, it's the injury, and how durable is he? How consistent is he? He's the guy with the talent that was supposed to be the guy coming from Alabama, and he never was. He ended up taking the number 2 spot behind Golden when he was healthy.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions with these guys. It's not that the talent isn't there, and we've said that before. This draft isn't bad because the talent isn't there. This draft is bad because the talent hasn't produced to the level that we expect it to. And that's what makes this draft a bigger risk than even the normal draft.
Yeah. Our guy, Coach KT Smith, his guy is Xavier Restrepo.
I like him too.
Did he knock himself out of day 2 though with his testing, or was that explained well enough with the injury issue that he was going through to where teams will overlook that for what they saw on tape? Where, I mean, he runs away from defenders in the secondary when he's got the ball in his hands. I didn't see a 4.83. I saw maybe a high 4.5 or something like that. But.
Yeah, I thought he was going to run the 4.5s. I think that I'm not going to say he's a lock to go in round 3, but I think that there's enough NFL GMs that are smart enough to realize, okay, you just watch the tape. This guy's a good receiver. We don't need to overthink it. I don't know if he'll ever be a 1, but he's going to be a really solid number 2 receiver in the NFL, and he's really good after the catch. So you think maybe those teams with those comp picks at the back of round 3 could take a chance on him. I think in the second half of round 3, he's one of those guys that every year you see that guy fall, and it's like, we know this guy should not be there on day 3. Maybe that guy is Restrepo. But I still think this guy deserves to go in the 3rd round. I thought people were a little too high on him initially when they were trying to push him into the top 40, 45 picks. But now it's like all of a sudden, oh man, he ran a 4.83. He can't even go in round 3. Like, that's too big of an overreaction there. I think that round 3 is a safe spot for him. He's a very solid receiver. I think that he is gonna go round 3 if I had to bet on it one way or the other. Not a lock though. I definitely think that he's off by round 4.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay, final group of guys here. Unless you have anybody else you want to mention, let's move on to corners and safeties, the defensive backs group. Let's start at safety, because there's an argument to be made that only one safety goes in round 1, maybe 2. If I think Malachi Starks probably ends up going in round 1, but to me, it's Emanwari and Malachi Starks. And then outside of that, there's going to be several day 2 guys that are very intriguing for teams, starting with, in my opinion, the Texas kid, Xavier Watts.
Oh, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame.
Sorry, Notre Dame. Yep. Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. Yep, exactly. So his ball production was really good. He plays kind of that center field position. He's the guy that makes a lot of sense. And then the Texas kid is Makuba.
Yeah.
Andrew Makuba. He's a day 2 guy as well. I like my Penn State kid, Lathan Ransom, more than most. I think that he's still a day 2 type selection potentially. Does anybody else stand out to you in that group though?
Well, I don't know that your other Ohio State guy, Jordan Hancock, is going to go in on day 2, but man, that this guy actually, I don't know if you saw what he tested as pro day, but he had a great pro day. Jordan Hancock, 6 foot, 186. He was a little bit lighter than expected, but 4.42 in the 40, 41.5 inch vertical, 10.6 broad. This guy was a lot better athlete than what I gave him credit for. I think he'll probably go early day 3, be more of a special teamer to start off his career, but he's definitely got athletic upside. I think Xavier Watts from Notre Dame does kick things off on day 2. And Malachi Starks is there on day 2. He should be the first pick off the board on day 2. I can tell you right now, that guy does not deserve to go on day 2 of the draft when you watch his tape. But Billy Bowman from Oklahoma tested a lot better than I expected. He's a versatile safety. He can come downhill and hit you hard, even though he's not the biggest guy. You mentioned Makuba. He's my number 5 safety right now. The Penn State guys are going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I was going to ask you who do you go first of those 2 guys.
That's so tough. I've been hearing Jalen Reed's name more recently, but that could just be recency bias. If NFL teams have done their homework, you go back and watch Kevin Winston from 2023. I think it's a totally different conversation. Kevin Winston, you're arguing with a solid senior year is a late first round pick. So I think if I had to bet on it, I'm going to go with the guy I have rated higher, which is Kevin Winston. Would not shock me at all if Jalen Reed goes because of his versatility, his ability to play multiple roles, his ability to adapt. He showed a lot of maturity this past year. So it wouldn't shock me if he goes first. But Kevin Winston Jr. is another name, could be in that third round discussion. I think both of them probably go in the third round. Maybe one of them slips to day 3. But I think both of those guys will grade out similarly on most teams' boards. It's just a matter of whether they want the safer option or they want to go for that home run pick.
Are there any strong safeties, like pure strong safeties on day 2? Your favorite position in the NFL?
I love strong safeties.
Yeah,
I really do. There's not a bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, Makuba is not a strong safety. You can't play him a strong safety. Billy Boney, you could make the argument you could play Xavier Watts there if you needed to. But even him, I see him as more of a guy that's going to move around a lot in the NFL. I don't see him sticking specifically to that. A strong safety's got to have at least decent size. If you're below 210, you're probably not playing strong safety in my type of defense, at least. Kevin Winston Jr. has the ability to play either or. Lathan Ransom, you mentioned him. Same thing, can play either or. I don't think there's a true guy. You could go to Jonas Sanker at Virginia. I don't have a day 2 grade on him. I've got like a late 4th on him right now. Not his biggest fan. He could potentially play strong safety, but you're going all the way down to maybe Jalen Reed, RJ Mickens from Clemson. He's not going day 2. There's really not. Nick Emenwari is the one guy who could play a strong safety role in a prototypical defense and dominate in that role. Outside of that, like Craig Woodson from Cal, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the Troy Palomalus and the Cam Chancellors, the Keanu Neals, those are a dying breed, man, and it's sad. It's sad they were such impactful players.
They were
in their primes. So, yeah, it is intriguing. Let's go to the corners then. This one's interesting too because for me, there's maybe four guys that I could see going in round 1: Hunter, Johnson, Barron, and then I really think that where to go here?
Maxwell Harrison.
Maxwell Harrison's combine performance shot him into the round 1 consideration, but outside of those 4 guys, it's open season, and I think day 2 is going to be the day you see a lot of these guys come off the board too.
I would agree with that. And the question is, which one's going to be the one to go first off the board? It's so hard to tell. I think Maxwell Harrison, I think there's a good chance he goes round 1 too. If not, I definitely think he'd be the first one off. The guy that I think is the hardest one to predict right now is Azareye'h Thomas, because a lot of people are putting him in round 1. I've never had a round 1 grade on this guy. I think he's a little bit overrated. Tape was solid, but not elite. He ran a 4.58 at his pro day. That's a little bit concerning for me. He's still under 200 pounds. It wasn't like he added a bunch of weight. Let's see. He measured in at 6'1.5", 196. So it's solid size, 155, 10-yard split time. He's got decent suddenness. He had a really good shuttle time. And he's very elusive. He's got loose hips. There's a lot of things to like about him. But, man, I wouldn't have a piece about taking him in round 1. That's just me personally. I think he goes early. I think Benjamin Morrison could be the guy that also kicks off the corner group on day 2. You're talking him. Savon Revel could easily be a CB1 in the NFL with his talent, but he's a big risk because we haven't seen anything of him. He's coming off a gruesome injury. If I'm making a bet, I'm going to make a bet right here. Not a bet. I don't do that. But I got to catch myself here, what I'm saying. If I'm making a claim right now as the guy who kicks off day 2 with corners, it's going to be Trey Amos from Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I think he'll be the first one off the board because he is schematically versatile. I think there are enough teams that play enough press coverage, whether it be press zone or press man. I think there's going to be a team that's going to like his aggressiveness and take a chance on him. He ran really well. His tape is solid. I think that he is that first guy off the board. There's other names we could get to. I think there's decent depth on day 2 at corner. But again, raw. It's such like you're going to find guys that have the talent to be starters through 3 rounds, maybe even to some of the 4th, depending on the position. It's not that. It's that there is so much unknown. You can't say, like, man, there's a greater than 50% chance this guy works out. There's going to be a bunch of these guys that just fizzle out, and 2 years from now, we're going to forget that they were even in the league.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of longer corners in this draft class too.
Yeah.
Especially at the top. So I look at like nickel guys like a Quincy Riley, and I say, I just don't see a spot for you on day 2 with all the outside type corners that look like they're going to go earlier. I look at kind of some of the avatar like corners like Darian Porter, or Zoff Frazier might have off-seasoned himself into a day 2 conversation with the back end of the 3rd round with the upside of the traits. But then again, guys who are that raw as prospects as well, they can fall too. So there's a wide range of possibilities with all of these guys. But I love your take on Trey Amos. I was going to talk about him. He just is kind of like, if you're looking at high floor, solid ceiling corner, he's the guy for me that is just like, you just add him to your roster on day 2 if he's available and you need a corner help, because he can help you in a multitude of areas and he's got scheme versatility.
I 100% agree with that. And one comp that I wanted to mention for your guy, Darian Porter, because I know that you're a big fan of Darian Porter. A guy that I was thinking about recently that I think would make a lot of sense when you're comparing the 2 guys and the way they play would be Caleb Farley, former pick of the Tennessee Titans, was a popular name in that draft. I think you've got, I think you mentioned he was like about 6'2", 197, bigger corner, had a lot of athleticism, could play a lot of different roles. And he struggled with injuries, durability, things like that. I understand it's a little bit different, but if you're talking about a guy just from a tools aspect and a size aspect, I think Caleb Farley and Darian Porter, I see a lot of similarities from their tapes when they came out.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's get wrapping this one up. Let me ask you this question. Who is a guy that we've been talking about that we've said this guy's going, or not even we necessarily, but the consensus has been this guy's going in the 1st round that we think could drop to day 2 and kind of shake up the early portion of round 2? That's like, okay, this guy's on the board still. How did that happen? Could we see some trades for trying to get this guy? Or does it start to push his position group down a little bit? Who's that guy for you that could find himself falling enough into day 2 to where we're like, or at the back end of round 1 to where we're like, man, this guy could end up a day 2 prospect?
Well, as Mel Kiper would say, if I could predict the shocker, it wouldn't be a shocker. So it's hard to say, like, if you're looking for that guy, that, whoa, I can't believe that he's still available. But usually most years, last year may have been an exception, but most years there's usually that one guy that's like, I have no clue how this guy's available. Just 2 years ago, Joey Porter Jr. Who would have thought that guy would have fallen to day 2? And sure enough, Steelers took advantage, and he's been pretty good for him. If I had to mention one name that I think would probably be a pretty big shock to most people that for some reason could potentially shock the world, a guy we both love, Jahad Campbell.
Yeah.
If people are concerned about the injuries,
yep,
there is a world in which he could drop all the way out of round 1. There is a huge range with this guy. I don't have a problem if a team thinks he's good enough to be a top 10 pick. I think he is good enough to be a top 10, top 15 pick. But if they're not comfortable with his medicals, he could be out of round 1. I could see a scenario in which that happens. I'm not going to bet on it. I think that a team like Tampa Bay would be foolish to pass on him. But with how much people are raving about Jalen Walker and just the position of, it's inside linebacker, we can find a guy to plug and play there in the middle rounds, even day 3. Get a Jack Kaiser in round 5 compared to Jahad Campbell in round 1. We'll wait. If enough teams do that, I think Jahad Campbell's the one name I think people would be shocked if he was still there. But it's a possibility.
He was the exact person I was thinking of for that exercise too.
Yeah.
It just because of the injury history, and it's not a premium position. And it's not one where I feel like you're going to have to where it's take these two guys or bust at it in this draft class either. So the other guy that I would say would be like prime day 2 target if he were to fall out of the first round is actually one of your guys, Luther Burden from Missouri. If he is still on the board day 2, he's going very quickly on day 2, in my opinion. And just with the upside that he's got, Tyler Booker's off-season program didn't help his draft stock, but I still think he's a first-round pick, especially with the lack of overall talent on the offensive line in round 1.
I still want to know how ChatGPT has called him a Baltimore Raven already. And I find that very intriguing. ChatGPT, when I was using it to look up comps for Tyler Booker, just to use it as a tool to see, what other guys throughout history have compared similar. It says Tyler Booker, guard for the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm just saying, Baltimore, you need to be a lot more confidential with what information you're putting out there, or what you're allowing your phone to listen to when you're in these meeting rooms. Your phone may be picking up on something here. If you guys do take Tyler Booker, that'd be pretty hilarious.
That's hilarious. Oh, let's see. I was just going to see if there was maybe a former Baltimore Raven named Tyler Booker.
I was looking. I couldn't find it. I legit looked up. I'm like going, is there a Tyler Booker on the Ravens roster? Was there a Tyler Booker on the Ravens roster? Like, I can't find one. And definitely, I can't even find a Booker name that played offensive line for the Baltimore Ravens that I can find that compares to the guys they were comparing to. It was weird to see that come up. Yeah. I'm like, I had to double take, triple take.
Yeah, he's playing Oz Perlman, Oz the mentalist on us right now, ChatGPT. Yes. That dude's all the rage right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's making draft predictions before the NFL draft happens. But hey, good stuff. Fun show. Andrew, we're going to keep the draft times rolling. Next week, it looks like we're doing maybe some buy-sell candidates, some trade candidates potentially, guys, or teams that could trade up or trade down, some different topics under those categories. So stay tuned to the Draft Dynasty Podcast, to fansfirstsports.com and FFSN NFL for all of your NFL draft news and notes. Andrew, anything you want to plug, though, before we get out of here for sure?
Check out those scouting reports. They're going to keep coming. We'll have another mock draft or 2 before the draft. And I'm going to be working on some scouting reports tonight. Hopefully a couple of them more. We've got a couple more coming on some of these day 2 guys. We've gotten through all the guys that I think are consensus round 1 picks. We're going as much as we can into day 2. I'm using every ounce of time that I have available, which is sometimes limited. But we're going to get through as much as we can and try to formulate a big board to finish off the draft process the week of the draft.
Good stuff. That's going to do it for us here on the Draft Dynasty Podcast. Talk to you later.